All right, Doug, we're back with questions from our viewers, specifically questions from members of our private file. There's information about that membership below in the description if you want to learn more. First question, Doug, is how long before the shit hits the fan?
Yes, of course. Well, the first rule of predicting, and you don't want to call it predicting, you want to call it forecasting. That sounds a lot more legitimate. Okay, it's not like you're a fortune teller at that point. Is if you're going to predict often, that's one thing. And the other thing is if you're going to predict, and this is more to the point, to the question, it's if you're going to predict the event, don't predict the time, or vice versa. If you're going to predict the time, don't predict the event. So you can, either way, you can romance it and fill it in. But since I'm not a fortune teller, I'll just tell you what I think. It's that this is a case of the inevitable becoming imminent. And for a long time, I've said, look, something really bad could happen. The collapse of the economy anytime in between tomorrow morning and a few years from now. Well, is that very helpful? Well, maybe it is. But look at it this way. It's like the collapse of the Roman Empire. People saw this coming. Romans did in their own time. They could see all of the same signposts that we see today as far as the way people acted and things they believed, and just the type of nonsense that accompanies the degradation and collapse of a society. I mean, they saw it coming, but it took a long time. It took hundreds of years. On the other hand, so look at it that way. Look, another way I look at this is it's like we have a 100-story building, and you can see that this 100-story building is poorly constructed and it's wobbling, and so you know what's going to happen. You just don't know exactly when it's going to happen. So I'm giving you a lot of analogies and guesswork, but my personal view, for what it's worth, and look, a lot of this comes down to intuition. All these idiot economists at the Federal Reserve, they all have PhDs and write abstruse papers using bizarre mathematical formulas and all that. They have no clue what's going to go on. None of them do. But I'll tell you the way I see it. If we don't have a major financial collapse, followed by an economic collapse, followed by all the things that come from those things in the next couple of years, I'm just going to be really, really surprised. I don't know. Nobody can give you, it's like, I'm not a Christian, as you know, but I like a lot of the quotes from Jesus in the gospel. He says, what did he say? He says, we know not the day nor the hour, something like that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yes. No, we don't. But I mean, using your metaphor of the building that is going to collapse, you're just not sure when. I think you don't occupy that building, right? Like, it's going to collapse. You just go somewhere else. And so when we're talking about the markets, though, this is the hard thing, because we know the currency is being inflated. So we need to kind of play, speculate at least to try and offset that. And with if the markets are this building, and they certainly seem like they are that building, that condemned building that will ultimately come down, how do you manage that? You got to be in it, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, look, I pretty well laid this out. You don't want to hold dollars. They're hot potatoes from many points of view. You definitely don't want to hold bonds. Stocks are really dangerous at this point. Some, most, almost all, I should say. But at the same time, in our private group here, recommended several stocks, small speculative issues, generally speaking, and they've generally, I think, done pretty well.
Yeah, and they're priced cheaply and pay dividends, many of them. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So where are you going to run? Where are you going to hide? As I've said before, if you're in a financial position to be, you should have a crib outside your home country in a second stable country that you like it. You should have, so you're not, since your main risks are political, not financial, well, the financial and economic risks are gigantic, you ought to have a second citizenship so that you're not totally under the control of one government. And as far as your assets are concerned, I think owning the right kind of real estate, we've talked about what the right kinds and wrong kinds of real estate are in the past, own a whole bunch of gold and put yourself in a position that you can speculate, which is not to say gamble, but when an opportunity comes up that's just really ripe, that you can jump on it, because I think the markets, as they approach the inevitable, are going to be going up and down like an elevator with a lunatic at the controls, which I think is a very good analogy.
Yeah.
So it's a dangerous time. And a depression, you got to recall, is a time when most people suffer a significant drop in their standard of living. And the average guy in the US, despite the fact that his iPhone is much better than it used to be, and we got widescreen TVs as opposed to the vacuum tube types and stuff like that. But I think the average guy's standard of living has been dropping. He doesn't have a lot of savings. He's got a lot of debt. And it's going to get a lot worse, because all the things that cause this drop in the standard of living in these subtle ways are accelerating, actually, because we've got actual Jacobins in charge in Washington, D.C. And the people that run the European economies are as bad or worse than the ones here in the U.S. So,
okay, so just to, let me. So the metaphor I'm getting here is it's a 100-story condemned building that has an elevator in it, of course, and that elevator is run by an elevator man who's a lunatic.
Yeah, pretty much. That's right.
So it's going to be more and more of that. Okay.
Yeah, I'd get away from that building.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, speaking of other stuff, we were talking before this about technology and this chat GTP stuff. We get lots of questions about it, and you and I have talked separately a fair amount about it, and I've been playing with it quite a bit. But a couple of questions, I'm going to kind of lump them together. The first one is, the guy's wondering if the specter of artificial intelligence might just be another massive psyop. He says, I have a nuclear physicist buddy who says the algorithms on display today were basically available in the 60s. Also, it strikes me that the people in charge would never let an actual real artificial intelligence exist, as it wouldn't be under their control. So that's the first one. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a very good and reasonable point. There's one thing I think he's missing, though, and that is that although the mathematics for understanding this thing probably been around for a long time, but the technology to put the theory into practice has not. And the fact is, computer technology is still advancing at the rate of Moore's law. Everything's getting faster and smaller and relatively cheaper. So it's not a spoof of any type. I think it's very, very real.
Yeah, and I think there's the horsepower of the processors that are actually that are running these algorithms, or running this large language model. There's also just the fact that there's so much language accessible now to these models that they can consume, huge, vast libraries of content that can be consumed by them, making them, that certainly didn't exist in the 60s. You wouldn't be able to do it. So I think those things make a big difference. And I think the other thing that makes me think it's definitely real is we saw early versions of this stuff, first with chess and then with Go, which is, infinitely more complex, and it won. I mean, and then the way that the Go model was trained, I think there were two of them, if I remember this right. The first one, they tried to teach it by giving it instructions, feeding it instructions, giving it logic at first. And then what they did after that is that with the second one, and it became superior. I mean, I think it beat everyone. But the second one, they had it train itself just simply by observing, mini games. So it saw many of them. And so rather than giving it any instruction on it, it just observed all this large data set of what it took to win. And it's literally unbeatable. No human stands a chance against it. It's not even close. And it learned it in much less time.
Yes. And it's not only Go, they've done it with poker too. And poker, unlike Go or chess, is a game where psychology plays a big part in things. So AI is covering all the bases. And who does what these government agencies that have billions of dollars to devote towards this, where they've advanced things too quietly and secretly? Yeah, it's very real.
Okay. So the second one is a guy who talks about it, and he says, he said, do you believe the introduction of AI personal assistants via these large language models will be pro-liberty? And he said, and he shares a podcast with us where the person goes into how it could potentially be that way. And this relates to something you and I a thought I had independently a few days ago myself about when in a conversation I had with the chat GTP. But what are your thoughts, first of all? Could it be actually good for liberty?
Well, technology has always been, in the long run, the friend of the average man. So, because technology is liberating. Technology increases your standard of living. And the bad guys always get it first. They make sure that they get it somehow, but it always leaks out. So I guess my analysis of this is that I think things are going to get much, much worse because of the bad guys having this technology first. But in the long run, I still believe in the ascent of man, even though I've got a very low opinion of the average human. Sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it?
Little.
Yeah.
Well, so I was having a hours-long conversation, I guess you'd say, with this chat GTP thing. Not with the chat actually, but with the underlying AI model, which doesn't have the same restrictions on, it doesn't have the same trust and safety governors on it. So it won't tell me, well, I won't write something positive about Trump. Like, it doesn't have any of that stuff in it. So it's easier, it's more interesting to work with. But anyway, as part of that conversation, ultimately, I got my first glimpse, I think, of what potentially my first glimpse in a long time is techno utopia vision of what could happen with it. And it does relate to exactly what the questioner asked, which is about personal AI, personal digital assistants. Because there's a book which I heard you recommend, I don't know, 20 years ago, called Diamond Age by Neil Stephenson. Yeah. And this book essentially is this AI escapes and falls into the hands of a little girl, and it biometrically bonds with her DNA, and it's only hers. It sits passively with her, around her, all at all times, all knowing, getting all the information about her, and is looking after her best interest, and enables her to, it teaches her skills, it teaches her, and it protects her from things. So it's like, it becomes this incredible thing, and that spreads to many beyond just Nell, this main character. And it's totally empowering and liberating for that individual. Now, it has to escape, though, in order for that to happen. But you know, I guess I hadn't thought of this metaphor. I hadn't thought of, for some reason, Diamond Age as the right way to think about what might be possible, what could really be good if it can get out.
Yeah, I continually recommend that book. In fact, I have to read it again because Stevenson is a really smart guy, and all of his books are, they're quite good. But I'm of the personal opinion, I haven't read all of his books, but I've read a number of them. And I think Diamond Age is the best of his books, which is saying something. So yeah, and I think it will happen because it's already been several years ago that it was announced that they've made a breakthrough in making quantum computing work, which means that the size of computers are going to get much, much smaller and much, much faster and much, much more powerful at some point, perhaps soon, when quantum computing is commercialized.
Yeah. It's interesting. So I think it'll be used for some evil first, but if it escapes, it could be a huge boon to personal liberty. All right. So the next one is from another one of our members. He says, I contend that law means something eternal and immutable, but the word has for centuries been hijacked by the elites to mean whatever they basically make up, kind of their arbitrary, illegitimate governments decide. I guess he's trying to get into this question of what's the difference between natural law and the law of man, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the law of man is something that is fabricated, put together, but natural law is something that's observed, not something that's manufactured. So there's a big difference between natural law and. Can
you give an example? An example of a couple of natural law?
Well, natural law, the law of gravity,
It's there.
Yeah, the laws of thermodynamics. It's just there. You can like it or not, but there it is. And all of the laws that are cranked out of Congress, parliaments, they're arbitrary. Most of them are stupid. Most of them are actually corrupt. So, yeah, it has a bad reputation. And when it comes to law, that's why I think between legislative law or Napoleonic law and English common law, which is basically the kind of general opinion of what works, that's codified to some degree in court cases.
Don't steal, don't murder.
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of law, common law, it's kind of commonsensical. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and honestly, when law extends beyond the commonsensical range, it becomes almost meaningless because no one can be aware of what the laws all are.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can't even remember what the 10 Commandments are, all of them. So 10 is too many to remember, quite frankly. And although I know the first 3 of them are how a person should relate to his God. And what if you don't believe in Yahweh? Well, and I guess I could remember 7. But look, there are only 2 laws. 1, do all that you say that you're going to do. And 2, don't aggress against other people or their property. Anybody can remember those 2 things. They're almost intuitive.
I think they're self-evident.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're pretty obvious.
And of course, I go further than that because physicists have tried to, and still are trying to take the various laws, the strong force, nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, gravity, and electromagnetism, and put them all together into just one great law. Well, whether they'll succeed or not, I don't know. But when it comes to human relations, I think there's really only one law. And that law is, the whole of the law should be, do as thou wilt, but be prepared to accept the consequences. And that encourages people to think things out. But what are the consequences of robbing that bank?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, it's a recognition of cause and effect.
Yeah, exactly. Which
is a natural law.
It's kind of a basic intelligence test as to how well and how consistently you can think out the consequences of what you do.
That's a good point. Okay, we have a currency question. Wants to know if you hold any currency other than US dollars, and then he wants to ask about the stability of the Uruguayan peso.
Uh, well, do I hold any currency other than US dollars? Well, I have Canadian dollars because I speculate in Canadian mining stocks, because most of the world's mining stocks are traded in Canada, not London or the US or Australia. And it's just more convenient. So yeah, I have Canadian dollars, and the Canadian dollar will suffer the same fate as the US dollar. And in my wallet, I have Argentine pesos. So I hold them. That's been a very bad investment. I got them the last time I was in Argentina. And just in the last 4 years, God, it's been a long time since I've been across the river. They've lost about 95% of their value. So the paper that just wound up in my wallet because I couldn't get rid of it has become almost worthless. And as far as the Uruguayan peso is concerned, it's actually not bad. It's not great, but in recent years, it's kind of held its value against the US dollar, hasn't it?
Yeah, I was just looking this morning in this question, and I compared to the US dollar over the last 12 months, it's up 9%. And the only other currencies that I could find in this short time period, the Mexican peso is also up 9%. The Costa Rican, can't remember the name of the currency, but it's up 14% compared to the US dollar. Everything else is, I mean, even the ruble is only up now 1% over the US dollar over that time period. So most things are way down compared to the dollar.
This tells you what's happening to the US dollar, that small Latin American countries, all of which have destroyed their currencies many times in the past, are actually doing better than the dollar. This should be a danger sign to anybody holding dollars.
Yeah, it really should. Okay. Next question. Frank asks, is the world becoming an extroverts paradise with a growing tendency for them to impose their views on others?
Yeah, I'll bet that question is prompted by the fact that you have all these crazy people, LGBT, et cetera, right, people that are basically acting as exhibitionists and putting on display their mental aberrations and expecting people to accept them as being sane.
Not even accept it, embrace.
Yeah, that's right. Not just accept, but embrace it and promote. So, and they've been successful so far. So maybe being a completely crazy exhibitionist, serious mental problems. Yeah, that's worked out recently. It won't work out, I don't think, too much longer.
No, I don't think so either. But it has worked so far. That makes sense.
It has worked so far. Well, I guess anything is possible. Anything can happen. And that's happened too. I guess it doesn't really violate one of the laws of physics that if somebody acts out, they can influence the psychology of, confused people. So they got away with it for a while, but no, it's going to end poorly for these people.
I think so.
A lot of them are going to wind up committing suicide, I think.
I think so too. Or, and there are inviting a backlash. Eventually people get pushed too far, crosses too many lines, and people have nothing to lose. And they're obvious targets, these big exhibitionists.
Yeah, they're going to wind up getting blamed. And there's a lot of fault that can be assigned to them when, society starts falling apart. So if I were them, I'd tone it down a little bit.
Just a bit. Yeah. Okay. Next question. This guy says he's in the B2B space, business to business space. He said, I don't understand the end game of the elites or large woke companies. I've seen the M&A activity over the last few years, even with my industry, lots of private equity buying distribution, and consolidating of large manufacturers. So lots of destruction of small and middle biz. But at the end, where will be the demand from the consumers or businesses for the bigs to supply from their giant factories? I may be gone, and many of my competitors as well. I won't be leasing a Tesla or a new piece of equipment. So how are the bigs actually benefiting long-term when there will be so fewer buyers?
Yeah, okay. So I guess the question is, are the bigs really just going to self-destruct, actually. And yeah, that's entirely possible because I think that there's an optimum size for almost anything.
Everything.
Yeah, doesn't matter. Different things have different optimum sizes, bigger, smaller. But yeah, I think that, well, but are they, and do they have a death wish? That they're getting so big and destroying the foundations that their success was built on? You know, I think it's just a question of all living things want to grow as big and as powerful as they can. It's part of survival. It's a good way to survive. But when you overdo something, these things can get out of control. I think that's going to happen.
Yeah, it makes sense that these. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that's why I wouldn't own something like any really gigantic company, because when it gets so gigantic, it inevitably becomes bureaucratic and concrete bound and stupid and unmanageable. What point is that? But I wouldn't own Microsoft or Google or any of these things, entirely apart from the fact that they're evil at this point.
Exactly. Well, I think one of the big things with it is that the incentive structure for all these managers is just one where, it's about hitting 1 year or maybe 2 year targets. Maybe some are only quarterly focused, even because their incentives are based on that. So these incremental improvements in the business, even if they might mean a decade from now, a totally different landscape that's bad for your business, I think that they're destined to follow it anyway, because they're just going to follow the incremental growth opportunities that are in front of them, because that's the way the incentives are structured.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the upper management levels that have stock options don't really care so damn much about the business. They really just care about their stock price, which is, it's kind of a perverse incentive. Should be a good incentive, but it's kind of a perverse incentive when you're in a stock market bubble, which incidentally, we still are. It's like somewhat deflated, but we still are in a stock market bubble. So,
Doug, this next question is about central bank digital currencies. With the implementation of central bank digital currencies, what will the economy consist of? Will there be an economy if there are no incentives to work, ability to save, or even move about? Maybe similar to communist societies, except run by algorithms.
Yeah, let's see. So how does the society exist in dystopian sci-fi movies like Soylent Green? That's a good one. You got all these people living in a New York where absolutely nothing works anymore, but there's still these people running around like rats, but they're surviving somehow. I guess food is the only thing that still comes in the form of Soylent Green. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think in its ultimate end, what it could do, the constraints it could place on people could be to that extent where there is no productive activity that happens. But it seems to me that the incentives are for the state to have rails on the economic system, because they believe that they can manage it. They believe they can control it. And like they could just, if they, this inflation and deflation thing could all go away if we had central bank digital currencies in their mind, because we could better regulate things. We could get beyond our limited money ideas, and we could really do the modern monetary theory if only we had the technology and the means for central bank digital currency. So I think the way they imagine it is, I really believe the way they imagine it is that it'll be much like it is now, except for there will be the all-seeing eye that knows everything and everything that's happening and can regulate where they deem necessary. And they probably see that, honestly, as something benign, something that's just normal and helpful, like the regulators already do. Of course, for us, we see it as evil and can be used for evil. But, I think that they probably don't. I don't think that they see it that way. I think they need to keep the economy functioning. They need to keep the power structures in place. The money has to be managed in order to keep that from happening.
Yeah. Well, we'll see who's right and who's wrong. But I think it's a foundation built on quicksand.
Oh, I agree.
So yeah, it'll all collapse.
Yeah, just to be clear, I was arguing
No,
I
no,
think the best case scenario for the way I think they're
no, I think
doing
that's an accurate explanation of how these guys think, because they live in their own bubble, they live in their own silo. Guess we live in our own silos too. Yeah. So, I think we're right and they're wrong.
For sure, no doubt about it.
So, unfortunately, they've got much, much more power than we do at the moment. We're like,
yes.
We're like rounding errors, we're like genetic mutations out on the edge. So, well, it's a fun comedy to watch if you have a sense of humor.
It is, and actually, one of the members of our private group actually did a little short story, sci-fi short story about what he imagined the future would look like, and incorporated the use of these central bank digital currencies. Maybe I'll post a link to it in the description for people to check out. It's pretty funny, actually.
Oh, good. Excellent.
So the next question, Doug, is this person is interested to hear your opinion on to speculate on what you think George Soros's aim might actually be. Is he actually evil, or does he think he's improving mankind with his actions?
Well, Jim Rogers was his partner for many years when they built the quantum fund together, and both became billionaires. And, Jim and I are still very good friends. Although he lives in Singapore, so we don't stay in touch that much anymore. But I asked him, because I thought, who would know better than him that I could get a straight answer from? And his straight answer to me, and it was a straight answer, was, we just never talked about anything but business. We just never talked about the markets, never got into anything at all. So kind of seems unlikely to me, but yeah, you can have that kind of relationship. I've had that kind of relationship with people in the past where it was strictly business. Yeah. So I don't know the answer. Neither does Jim.
Nope. Okay. What's your take on Battle Bank, which is Rick Rule's new bank that he's doing with Frank Trotter, I believe? Would you put an important amount of your money in there, considering the risks of having money in the U.S.?
Well, I've already put a pretty reasonable amount of money in it because I'm one of the founding investors. Rick rounded up a whole bunch of his friends and said, you want to invest in the bank. Rick owns most of the stock. That can be good and bad. On the bright side, Rick is certainly one of the most money-oriented people you'll ever meet. I mean,
he's keeping score.
Yeah, he really is. He's very, very money-oriented and getting more of it. So, and Rick understands that in order to be successful in business, you've got to offer value to the people and Frank I've also known for a very long time.
He's a great guy. And he built Everbank. He built Everbank successfully, sold that. That was a great success. So he has experience.
Yep, exactly. And, they both understand libertarianism, the freedom philosophy, understand it and agree with it. So, I'm going to move my money from Wells Fargo, which I hate passionately. It's so big. It's dysfunctional. Yeah, awful. And take my business to Battle Bank and suggest everybody else do so, which is probably why Rick invited me to.
Yeah, exactly. Well, my plan's exactly the same.
Exactly. Well, I don't know of a better bank out there. It's not up. They're still spending money on lawyers, getting approved and all this kind of nonsense. But I guess it'll be up and running soon.
This year, you think, though, right?
Well, it better be.
Okay.
Otherwise, the only people that are going to make any money on it are going to be the lawyers.
Good point. Okay. Well, when they launch, we should have Rick on or Frank on to talk about it.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be good for people to understand what the differences really are with it. All right.
Yeah, exactly. And it is helpful to have a sound, intelligently run bank as opposed to a giant behemoth, which, like all these other banks are, they're just impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doug, what's your advice for friends that are stuck with the COVID discussions all the time? They're people who basically saw the problems with COVID hysteria, saw the problem with the vaccines, and basically they're still sending links about the mRNA vaccines to people to warn them. He says at this stage, everybody knows what they want to know about it. They're not changing anyone's minds, I don't think, at this point. So it makes no sense to him to continue doing this, to continue, being this constant promoter of these things. What's your advice for somebody to try and get them to look ahead and maybe be more practical and constructive in what they're doing?
Well, I have some friends, people I like, that made a mistake. They didn't think things out, and they took these vaccines, and I hope they don't get sick. I mean, seriously sick. But the people out there that are still promoting the vaccines, I mean, I'd stay away from them at this point. They're either stupid or evil. And you don't want to hang out with people that are either stupid or evil.
Yeah.
I mean, I was so shocked when I saw this this snippet with Arnold Schwarzenegger, who I previously thought was a reasonably thoughtful and smart person. And I couldn't believe what he said. He says, "The hell with your freedom, wear your mask, take your vaccines." What's going on there?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that. This guy, his question is a little bit different though. He's asking, like, for the people who are, there was a time like a year ago where it was unclear whether or not the vaccines had risks, for instance. And so people were sharing data, sharing information wildly to try and wake people up while they still could. But that time's long past. And so he's talking about some friends of his who are still on that train, still constantly obsessed with trying to convince people to wake up, who aren't yet awake.
Well, the people that are in legislative bodies that are trying to, for whatever reasons they have, trying to enforce, we've discussed this before, why they're trying to enforce these things. This movement has a life of its own at this point. And other than staying away from people that are actively promoting the vaccines, because I think they're either stupid or evil, I mean, I don't think there's much we can do about it.
Yeah, I agree. We've had some people in our Telegram group too that were, constantly just posting articles and, sharing links to things that, again, that just another study that showed the vaccines were bad, and et cetera, et cetera. And it just, like, in the Telegram group, I had to tell them, I'm like, listen, everyone here agrees with you. Like, but stop posting it here. The energy is totally poorly served on your part, and it's annoying to the rest of us. It's just, you're talking to a vacuum. I mean, we get it. You're preaching to the choir, I guess you'd say. So, and it's kind of like, there is some point where I remember after 9/11, after my belief about what happened 9/11, I was so outraged by the whole thing that I spent way too much time trying to sell people on my version of what happened. And where it was destructive to me, and certainly didn't help me. I didn't think I convinced a single person of anything the entire time. It's like people see it if they want. And so how do you get somebody out of that to save them the embarrassment of smashing their head against a wall, pointlessly for years?
Yeah. I don't have an answer for that. I don't know how you can do it. You can ask them. You can ask them, why are you doing this? It's pointless. And just because you might be interested in knowing what they say, but I don't think there's anything you can do about it. Maybe it's just a stage some people are going through.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Because it is something that seems so wrong to people once they come to a conclusion. It seems such an injustice, and they feel like that injustice is uniquely different than what normally happens, and so they can't let it go because they feel like something will be resolved with it because they still believe the world is just or that our systems are just.
Yeah, well, it's like Gilda Radner said, it's just one damn thing after another. It's always something. So,
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. We are told we need to move to this global communist / technocratic model to save the planet. Earth Day is Vladimir Lenin's birthday. Listen and silent, stressed and desserts, senator and treason are all anagrams. I know Doug isn't conspiratorial, but is it possible we're being mocked by the people that actually run the world?
Well, yeah, I think Sam Bankman-Fried had an element of that going on. His operation. I think it's interesting that previously I was aware of the fact that stressed and desserts was an anagram. I didn't know that senator and
treason.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, but nobody's made that up. I mean, senator is a word that comes from the Latin. It's been around,
it's just a coincidence that is, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, don't, I wouldn't use those things as proof that
no.
going on.
Yeah. I wouldn't use anagrams or numerology as the base case for
right, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. The question is, what would the ideal fourth turning investment portfolio be? And I think the best for that is if you're a member of File and a member of Pro or VIP member, you can see the portfolio. It's all there. So I'll skip that one. Yeah. Doug, the next question is asking about this guy, Gregory Mannarino. I don't know if you've seen him on YouTube or not, but he's a fast talking New York Wall Street guy. But he's very independent thinking. Certainly would agree with us. But he says he's very sharp. He believes a bond market meltdown is coming at some time in the future, potentially any day. The meltdown is caused by the Fed's constant balance sheet expansion in the bond market. Once that expansion stops, the bond market will collapse, causing a stock market collapse. He is stating a 90% drop in the S&P could be possible. What do you think?
Well, I don't know him or follow him. He may well be right. I'll tell you what my reasoning is for the bond market. It's that bonds are and have been for a long time a triple threat to your capital. Number one, they're in currency, the dollar mostly, and the dollar is going down. So that's one risk. That's of the triple threat. That's one risk, the currency risk. Number two is the interest rate risk, with interest rates still at close to all-time lows, and they're going to go to all-time highs in the future, and bonds fluctuate inversely. Right. That's the second risk. And the third is the default risk, which probably isn't an issue with US government bonds, but it is with all other bonds. So you can speculate in bonds, that's fine. But as a long-term holding, which is the way most people treat them, they're a disaster. There's certificates of guaranteed confiscation, which is what Franz Pick used to call them. So, and of course, when the bond market collapses, it's going to have very bad implications for just about everything. So I don't know what Mannarino's exact line of reasoning is, but that's my line of reasoning. Bonds are poison at this point.
Makes sense. Okay. Doug, last one for you is, in the past episode, you've alluded to the great teaching company, and this guy wanted to ask if there's any courses or professors that you in particular recommend. There's a whole bunch of courses that they have. I was just wondering if there's any area that you studied or professor that stands out to you as being interesting on there.
Well, most of the things that I listen to from the teaching company are on history. And when it comes to that, their best courses by far, I think, with the best teachers and the best material and all this, are on well, history number one in general, but ancient history, definitely. They've got quite a few courses on Greek and Roman and medieval history, especially Greek and Roman, and they're all excellent. I don't know of any bad professors that they have. I've got a couple of favorites. I mean, I've always liked Elizabeth Vandermeer's stuff. She's great. And Kenneth Harl is great. But all of them are great to do their ancient history courses. I don't think their courses on science or modern history are nearly as good as the ones on ancient history. Well, maybe that's just because what I'm really interested in. But I think of late, they've gotten much more into practical how-to courses.
Yeah. They've dumbed it down a little bit, it seems to me.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I guess if you want to learn how to be a bartender and mix drinks properly, they've got a course on that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's pretty good, I guess. But it's not what I listen to when I
guess the big difference is they did switch their business model where it was you'd pay for one course and it was pretty expensive. So you pay for these university, highly acclaimed university professors teaching a particular course. And that's all you had access to. But now it's kind of like Netflix and you pay a certain amount a month or a certain amount a year and you have access to the entire library. So that has enabled them to branch into new content and to offer people more stuff. So maybe it fits, I guess, within that new business model.
I guess that's okay. But, when they were still available, I got all my stuff on CDs because I can play them in my car. Yes, I know new cars don't have CDs, but I'm not going to get a new car for all kinds of reasons. Not because I can't afford one. I just don't want one for panoply of reasons. So, I play the courses that I got in CD in my car. And, I bought the other ones. I wait until they're on special. They charge, $200, $300 sometimes for a course, but, then they offer a 90% off special sometimes. So if you like the course, take advantage of it. But it's a great product. I don't know how much money they make or don't make at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. I do think that I'm wondering how well they made the business transition from the pay per course to this Netflix model, a subscription model. But if they did that well, if they made it cross that bridge well, it could be excellent for their business. I mean, totally smooth out all their revenues and give them much more certainty to build a business around. So essentially it could be good.
Fact of the matter is, though, if you go on YouTube, you can get most of the material that's offered there for free on YouTube. Well, I'm lazy and the teaching company makes it easy for me. So
I'm still a big fan. I'm still a big fan.
I think it's fine. I think there's a lot of good stuff there. And look at the ancient Greek and Roman stuff.
Okay.
That's the pick of the litter as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Well, great. I think that's it for today, Doug. So thank you very much. And we'll be back next week.
Great. Thanks, Matt.